Bill Rabinowitz is with us now. He covers Ohio State football for the Columbus Dispatch, and he's been doing it since 2011. Also has a podcast, Buckeye Extra. Make sure to check that out. He's here to get us ready for Ohio State, Minnesota, September 2nd. We're right around the corner. This is coming out on a Friday, so 6 days away. Bill, how are you feeling as college football is back? And we're going to get crowds. You're going to be traveling. How excited are you for this season and just sort of get a sense of normalcy?
Yeah, that's the word. It'll feel normal. We did travel last year, so that part of it was strange to go to Penn State and have an empty stadium, and obviously Ohio Stadium was empty. It was just bizarre. So it'll be nice to be in front of a full stadium. Although I admit with the Delta variant, that is an issue, and I hope people end up being safe from all this. But the idea of having a somewhat normal season is certainly appealing.
And this game in particular, this is a really interesting matchup. I first wanted to start with just an overall question as Ryan Day has really taken over here, Ohio State, these last couple of years. It's been a seamless transition from Urban to Ryan. He's 23-2. I'm sure there's a lot of similarities in a lot of ways with these guys, but what do you think the biggest differences between these two are as you've covered both of these coaches?
I think it's mainly personality. Urban Meyer was such a driven, kind of intense, laser-focused guy. And I think that, look, he's a great coach. He's going to be in the Hall of Fame. He's one of the best, 10 college coaches of all time, 3 national championships. But his style is to grind you. And I think after 7 years, people just kind of get tired of it. It's hard to be, that kind of method for that long. Ryan Day is just as competitive as Urban, but he's kind of more low-key. And I think it's been a breath of fresh air in a certain way. He's a warmer personality. But he's just, he's a driven guy too. And it helps to, he was given the keys to a Cadillac and he has really enhanced it. I mean, the recruiting has been, if anything, even better than under Urban Meyer, which is amazing. And then probably the biggest question was, okay, we knew Urban Meyer could recruit because he was Urban Meyer. Could Ryan Day recruit at the level that Ohio State expects? And the answer so far is yes, he can and has. So it's, he's been very successful, 23-2, and then
insane.
It's insane. So this is just another year, and every year has kind of been an issue. I just wrote about that last night. Every year, the first year is obviously replacing a legend. Second year is dealing with COVID. Now he's got to break in a quarterback who's never thrown a pass.
Yep. And listen, I think people look at it as like, oh, okay, like you said, he got the keys to the Cadillac, but that's not always the case. I mean, you look at a team like Texas, they still haven't got back since Mac Brown has left. Like there's been a lot of situations where these legendary coaches leave. Maybe they'll give it to their disciple, but it's not nearly run the same. So Ryan Day has done a fantastic job. Let's do the redshirt quarterback that's going to start on Thursday, and that's C.J. Stroud. I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly, who will be the Buckeyes start against the Gophers. I know there was a quarterback competition between 3 guys. What can you tell us about Stroud just as he separated himself and been named the starter?
Yeah, I asked Ryan Day if there was kind of a moment where he just separated himself. He said, no, it was just over time. It's an interesting case because he was a late bloomer. He did not have a lot of offers. He didn't start until his junior year of high school, Rancho Cucamonga High School in California. And then he just took off. He was the MVP at the Elite 11 competition. Ohio State already had a commitment from Jack Miller, who was a 4-star quarterback, but they really liked Stroud and pursued him and signed him. And now he's the guy. The other quarterback is Kyle McCord, who's a true freshman. And Kyle McCord has been very impressive from everything we hear. We don't get to watch a lot of practice, but he's a true freshman. And it's almost, I don't say it's unprecedented, but I think Arch Leister's the last true freshman to start Ohio State. That's 40 some years ago.
Right.
And so it would be a little bit unrealistic to think he would start. The competition's not over. If CJ Stroud struggles against Minnesota, this is not a lifetime appointment. We'll see how it goes. And then, of course, the guy waiting in the wings is Quinn Ewers, who's the highest rated of anybody. So he would have been the number 1 player in next year's recruiting class, is your overall prospect. And he decided to enroll to take advantage of NIL. He's not going to be a factor, at least for a while, because he just got here and doesn't know anything. So, but it's CJ Stroud's job. He's a strong guy, a big guy. He's more of a passer than a runner, but he can run. He's got a great arm. He seems to be a mature guy. He seems to be a confident guy, one of the more quietly confident guys, kind of in the mold of Justin Fields in terms of leadership. But I guess he can get after you if you need to be gotten after. And so,
Right.
he's a mystery to us as well as to everybody because we don't get to see a lot of practice, but they're very high on him.
I think the big thing with Stroud, if you're Ryan Day, is like, hey, you don't have to be Justin Fields from last year, Master Teague, Olave. Like they've got a really nice group of offensive playmakers. You don't have to be necessarily great, right? So I think that's kind of a similar situation, even with Tanner Morgan. I mean, Tanner Morgan's got a great running back. He's got some. The wide receiver position is a little bit questionable, but that offensive line is one of the strong suits for Minnesota. So it's almost like with this game, what quarterback is going to make that game-breaking play, whether it's a turnover or whether it's a big throw that you didn't expect one of those two to make.
Yeah, I think this is a fascinating matchup because it's the first game on the road with a new quarterback for Ohio State. Look, Ohio State's got better players than Minnesota does, but first game, new quarterback, everything's going to be revved up. And Minnesota's an experienced team, a good team, experienced. Last year, obviously not a great year, but how much do you really count last year? It was such a bizarre circumstance. And what can he really take from that to say that's really what this team is? Tanner Morgan is a experienced quarterback. He's a sharp guy. I talked to him at the Big Ten Media Days and was really impressed with him. Just seems to have a presence about him.
Yep.
You mentioned the running back. I mean, Minnesota is going to be a tough challenge. If this were an October game, I would say, okay, Ohio State's probably going to win fairly comfortably. But first game with all that comes with that, I think Ohio State would be happy to get out of there with a win and say thank you.
Bill Rabinowitz is with us now, and I agree. I think that's what Minnesota hopefuls are telling themselves. If you can ever get Ohio State, you probably want them in the first game, freshman quarterback, new season, on the road. If there was any sort of, ingredients to try to upset Ohio State, this would be the situation where you would want them. What would you say the biggest weakness on this Ohio State team is? Reading some things that you wrote, the linebacker position seems to be something that isn't fairly, taken care of.
Right.
What are some question marks for that Ohio State team?
Well, I think, other than the quarterback, which I wouldn't say is a weakness, but it's a question mark, I'd say the pass defense. Really, I don't say the back seven, because I think the pass rush has a lot to do with pass defense. It's last year they ranked 122nd nationally in pass defense. Yeah, that's just not good enough. I don't care what the circumstances were. It's Ohio State. That should not happen. And so they've got two quarterbacks who are coming off injuries. They should be pretty good, but again, we don't know. Linebackers, as you said, we're pretty sure Taraja Mitchell will start because he was just named the captain. The other 2 or 3 spots, however they line up, we don't know. So the back seven is going to be a question mark. Now, the front four should be really good. Zach Harrison, who looks poised for a breakout year, is a 5-star guy. Tyreek Smith, terrific player at the other end. You have Haskell Garrett, who is All-American candidate in the middle. I mean, you have a very good and very deep defensive line, and that matchup against Minnesota's offensive line will be fascinating. If Ohio State can control that line of scrimmage, can put pressure on Morgan, I think they're in pretty good shape. But if they can't, then they could get exposed.
Ohio State always has an edge rusher that jumps off the screen, Chase Young, Joey, or Nick Bosa. Right. Does Ohio State, maybe not to have those likes of names compared to, but do they have a guy? Is it Garrett? Who is their guy that you just is going to jump off the field that you're going to know instantly he's going to be a great player? Yeah,
I mean, it might be Zach Harrison. He's a junior now. He's a 5-star guy based more on potential, but he's got, all the measurables. He's tall, he's rangy, he's fast. The other guy's Tyreek Smith on the other side, really talented. And then you have these 2 freshmen, Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau from Washington, who had the longest recruitment of all time, finally agreed to come to Ohio State in July. So he's still new. I think Sawyer's going to be an earlier factor than JTT, as we're calling him. We're still not exactly sure how to pronounce his name. We've heard about 3 different ways. But those 2 guys, those freshmen, are going to be spectacular. Jack Sawyer in the spring game had 4, I call them air sacks. You don't really sack the quarterback in the spring game, but 4 whatevers. You don't notice defensive guys in spring games very much, just because the nature of the scrimmage. You noticed him, and you go, wow. And if JTT is as good or better, wow. So, they're really good on the defensive line. Larry Johnson might be the best defensive line coach of the country. Kerry Combs, the defensive coordinator, told me he's the best defensive line coach in the history of college football. And if you actually look at his track record, he's probably right. What he did at Penn State and now what he's done at Ohio State is remarkable. So that's going to be the foundation of that defense.
We talked about the quarterback. We talked about now the defensive line. Any other storylines that you're looking at between these two teams that potentially could affect the outcome of this game?
Sure. I mean, I wonder how well Minnesota can cover Ohio State's receivers. Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson leading. Again, I hate to keep repeating myself, but it's a very deep and talented receiving core. Marvin Harrison Jr., yes, the son of the Hall of Famer, is a freshman, but he is just dazzled. People are just talking about him like he's spectacular. You have Julian Fleming, who was the #1 receiver in last year's recruiting class. Jackson Njigba is going to be the slot receiver. Garrett Wilson is going to move from slot to outside. He's a really talented guy. Broke all kinds of records in Texas.
Love their tight end too, by the way.
Yeah, Jeremy Ruckert is terrific. An improved blocker and great hands. Yeah, he's going to be a real threat there. So it'll be interesting to see how Ohio State lines up on the offensive line, because at the start of training camp, you thought it would be Nicholas Petit-Frere and Thayer Munford at tackle, but they've moved Munford inside the guard. They really like what DeJuan Jones is, a 6'9", 370-pound right tackle, what he's done. So we're not sure how they're going to line up, but it looks like that's the way they're going to line up. So that'll be fascinating to watch. And then the running backs, because they got, Master Teague is one of 5 that are really good. They have a freshman, Travion Henderson, a 5-star guy who I'm really excited to watch. I mean, if you watch his YouTube tape, I feel like Mel Kiper here. I mean, he's just like, wow. I mean, watch those. Yeah, the competition wasn't necessarily great, but the vision and the speed and all that it's just kind of like takes your breath away a little bit. We did a good job here previewing this game. I just wanted to get your overall thought on college football. What was your reaction, I guess, to the SEC bringing in Oklahoma and Texas in these coming years? What was your reaction? Because you have a conference like that, and those are the 2 teams, right, that people will probably tune in to watch when it comes to conference championship, even though they just started to do that. I'm glad that the Big Ten, ACC, and Pac-12 got together and said, hey, we're going to stick with our guns here. We don't want Ohio State's going to the SECs or Clemson's. Like, that's not what makes college football. This isn't a super league. I'm very glad to see that the conferences are sort of coming together and saying this isn't going to happen. Yeah, I kind of covered to some degree the first round, the round about a decade ago. And Nebraska left I forget if it was the Big 8 then or the Big 12 then, I can't remember, because they were tired of being kind of pushed around by Texas. Texas and Oklahoma leaving the Big 12 is somewhat equivalent to like Ohio State and Michigan leaving the Big 10. I mean, those are the marquee programs. I mean, obviously Michigan has been down for a while, but those are the marquee programs. And Texas is always kind of looked out for itself. It's created its own television network, and yet the results on the field don't justify all that. They should be a top 5 program. I mean, they've got all the resources in the world. They're in Texas with all that talent. They should be, but for whatever reason, and I'm not close enough to really know, other than I know there's a lot of politics involved and a lot of just kind of, it doesn't seem to be a lot of alignment with Texas. But I think the Big Ten, what yesterday's announcement, it really wasn't much. It was just like, hey, we're sticking together, and we're not going to let the SEC dictate everything. If there's strength in numbers in terms of conferences, we're going to at least flex our muscles that way. We don't have any details. We don't know what's going to happen. They don't even have a contract, which I thought was rather amusing, I'll put it kindly, for a conference commissioner who is a lawyer by trade to say, well, almost proudly, if you need a contract, there's a problem. Well, he's a lawyer. You would think you'd want contracts at some point. The fact they don't have one yet tells you how early in the process this is. But it'll be fascinating to watch.
Last one for you. This has always been a gripe for me with the Big Ten. Do you think they need to look at the divisions that they've separated here? Because right now, I mean, you read the East Division, it reads Michigan, Michigan State, Ohio State, Penn State. So you got 4, and then Indiana's supposed to be good this year, Maryland and Rutgers, versus a West Division in Illinois, Iowa, Minnesota, Nebraska, Northwestern, Purdue, and Wisconsin.
Well, look, it's better than legends and leaders. I mean, I'll give them that.
Yes, it is better than that.
Any divisional setup that has Ohio State in, I mean, Ohio State's going to make whatever division they're in the best division. Ohio State's won 4 straight Big Ten championships. You have those 4 powers. Michigan State's down. They're rebuilding. Michigan is what Michigan is right now, which could be Harbaugh's last year. Penn State started 0-4, 0-5 last year. Now, I think, they rebounded and won out the rest of the season. But, I think Penn State's probably the second best program in the Big Ten. You can make a case for Wisconsin, certainly. But, those 4 and Indiana, has become good. I mean, I think Tom Allen's done as good a job as I've seen by anybody in the conference, given the the obstacles he has to build a quality program there. I think he's done an amazing job. And even Rutgers was better last year. And
Yep.
Maryland, if Loxley can recruit the way that he's supposed to be able to recruit, and he has. I mean, Maryland's recruited better. Now that hasn't translated on the field yet, but it takes time. So yes, you look at the Big Ten East, and yeah, Rutgers is still down. But you look at that compared to the West. Whether Bielema can make Illinois respectable, we'll see. But there's no, power in the West. I mean, Wisconsin, like I said, is a very good program, but they are what they are. I mean, their goal is to win the Big Ten. Ohio State's really the only team in the Big Ten, maybe Penn State, that aspires to win a national championship. The rest of them are just kind of Big Ten is the ultimate goal. I mean, Northwestern, has been there a couple of times, championship game. That's not, that would be the ultimate bonus for Northwestern to get into a 14 playoff. They're not thinking about that, at the start of the year like Ohio State is.
Awesome stuff today, Bill Rabinowitz. Again, follow him on Twitter at BR Dispatch. Does a fantastic job covering the Ohio State Buckeyes for the Dispatch. Thanks again, Bill. I really do appreciate it. Enjoy the game, and I guess we'll see what happens on Thursday. We're hoping to keep it close. You guys are hoping to keep it rolling.
Well, thank you, Stephen. Appreciate having me on.